I'm Trish Toby with WARC reporting to you live from Westchester, New York, where there appears to be some sort of mutant menace on the loose.
Everybody, and welcome back to Mutant Menace. I am your host, Matt Aucamp.
And I'm your host...
Whoa! Go ahead.
And I'm your host, Pat Reber.
I mean, no, that's... I appreciate the initiative.
Yeah, I'm just trying to help.
You've been on the job hunt. You've been practicing that initiative, right?
That's right. I saw my opportunity, and I put myself out there. I said... I too host this show.
And it's up to the listeners whether they accept or reject that. So, you can email us at mutantmenacepod@gmail.com. Did you hire Pat based on this introduction or not?
Yeah. If you are a potential employer, please don't listen to this podcast.
Pat, how have you been? How's your week?
It's fine. You mentioned between jobs right now, so that can be a little mind numbing. I told somebody the other day that we overvalue our time and we have way too much of it, which is depressing. They told me it's the most unemployed thought they've ever heard.
I mean, I gotta say, yes, when you had a job, did you feel that way?
No. I didn't have there's not enough time in the world. You want to know something fun? See if you can spot it as the episode goes on. As I was reading and leaving my comments on these issues, I had a full therapy session. So see if you can figure out where in my notes.
So did you do anything X-Men related this past week?
Ooh. I thought a lot. I had a lot of time alone with my thoughts. I am doing a charity event tomorrow. It'll be long over. I should say I'm supporting my wife's charity event tomorrow. It'll be long over by the time this airs, so I'm not going to mention the name. But that's the X-Men do important work, and sometimes so do I. That's
a very X-Men-like of you.
I had a boring week. I went to the dentist.
Okay.
If you remember last episode, I had a toothache.
Okay, it's a tooth saga. We got a tooth saga going here. In my, I'll say, I do 2 podcasts, and both of my co-hosts have had tooth sagas that have carried over through multiple episodes.
Whoa!
So
maybe it's you.
I'm bad for the teeth. Well, do you want to just read some X-Men with me?
No, Matt. I want to know about your week.
Oh, my week was boring. No, actually, it was kind of exciting. Went to Chicago to visit a friend. I also went to the dentist, but it was just a follow up I got my wisdom teeth out late. All he really did was look and then say, "Yeah, they look fine," and that's about it. And I spent dozens of dollars on that.
Now, when you say you got your wisdom teeth out late,
midnight. No, okay. I got them out. I got them out just this past year. So, 37.
What else? Do we have anything non-medical going on in our lives?
No, I went to Chicago. I went
for a dentist appointment.
No, that wasn't my dentist appointment. That was to visit a friend for their birthday. And I don't know that there's anything like podcast worthy to talk about. Nothing that exciting or hilarious happened. It's just a trip to Chicago.
You talk about the news? What's in the news these days?
Nothing really has been going on for the past couple of years.
It will no longer be in the news cycle by the time this airs in 2 weeks.
Should we start this whole intro over again?
I was wrong, Matt. You were right. We should just get into the issues. Matt, start us off with issue 28.
The Wail of the Banshee, you mean?
Yes.
Okay. The Wail of the Banshee, written by Roy Thomas, edited by Stan Lee, drawn by Werner Roth, with inker Dick Ayers. Artie Simek is the letter, and there's some bullshit about Irving Forbush. The release date is November 3rd, 1966. Our issue opens on a brand new mutant we've never seen before, the Banshee, using his amazing screaming power to fly through the streets of New York, vibrate himself invisible, break a pane of glass, and put a whole city block into a trance. These are all the things that Banshee Scream can do. We see him use these powers to commit a series of robberies, much to the chagrin of his partner, Ogre. Ogre worries that Banshee is putting the mission for the mysterious Factor 3 in danger by being too reckless. He also soon somehow locates the X-Men's secret hideout. Meanwhile, Professor X is testing the limits of Mimic's expanded powers.
He's on the team now.
He's a full-fledged member.
He's the leader. He's mocking Scott for not being the... Sorry, go ahead.
Mimic flies out beyond the boundaries of where his powers reach, and his, wings fail him. He plummets from the sky, but somehow, even after completely crashing like an idiot, he still remains arrogant about the whole thing. Cerebro, meanwhile, has begun picking up blips from a mutant that is apparently even more powerful than Magneto.
It's picking it up on the M indicator.
The M. What the fuck is the M indicator?
The Mindicator.
The mint-flavored indicator.
Okay, real quick, I have a few thoughts on this. Number one, this is his new name for Cerebro, and it stands for Mutant Indicator. Number two, he's looking at the radar form of Cerebro.
Yeah.
And he's seeing an M on the screen, and he's calling that the M indicator. M for mutant. Or
yeah,
this is a whole new gadget. He has a lot of gadgets.
He is. Well, I mean, if you have Cerebro, maybe you have like other attachments for it.
This is an add-on.
Mm-hmm. You have Cerebro, then you have the
accessory you can buy for Cerebro.
That is called
Mindicator.
The Mindicator, and then there's like the Malarm, the M alarm that lets you know. There's the Misstep tracker,
the Mup Rest.
I also what it's picking up is Banshee's robberies, and this means number one, Banshee is stronger than Magneto.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't think that.
And second of all, do you want to talk about the robberies for a second? Because first, he robs an art gallery. Where
for
he
a single piece of art.
Yes, he takes a Gaelic painting of the Scottish Highlands from a man who is dressed exactly like the Penguin from Batman.
I just imagine that's how people dressed in museums back then.
And his second robbery.
And his second robbery is because he runs out of tobacco. For his pipe. For his sick, long-stemmed pipe.
This is where he almost gets caught.
But he doesn't. They set it up to seem like, oh, this is his fatal error. He got too greedy and went for a prize too small.
And he didn't reckon on it one man who was half deaf.
One man who forgot his hearing aid. The inverse of A Quiet Place. Look it up.
Okay. Apparently, Professor X somehow knows that this powerful mutant, his next target is the X-Mansion. And the X-Men prepare by playing with a bunch of machines for nothing. They don't come into play. And then putting ear shields on. Back at Metro College, Jean Grey hears about the Mutant Menace on the radio while hanging out with dipshit Ted, who also turns out has some kind of beef with his brother that'll come back. Not this issue, but foreshadowing. Banshee breaks into the X-Mansion and knocks out the X-Men with his sonic scream. By the way, all screams are sonic. It's not special. While the Ogre uses his suit's mechanical powers to grab Professor X and tie him up. However, Marvel Girl suddenly appears and distracts him long enough for the X-Men to recover. They fight the ogres, repello rays, propello boots, super strength, and blinding light powers to a standstill.
Like an ogre.
That's what an ogre has. When a hog-tied Professor X rolls into Ogre's legs, knocking him over, and that causes Ogre and Banshee to run away. The X-Men return to work building gadgets again and better ear shields when Banshee just suddenly returns, like, pretty much immediately. They catch him in a net, and Mimic absorbs his scream powers and uses them on Banshee. Then they shoot Banshee with a gas pellet gun and lock him in a pressurized chamber to keep him from screaming his way out. And quick note here, as this is happening, Cyclops notices a door that Professor X always keeps locked. The Ogre then bursts into the lab, knocking the X-Men out, and tries to shoot Banshee dead because he's like, you failed us. When Cyclops destroys his gun, Ogre flees, but is met by the Mimic, who beats the hell out of him and then subdues him. Banshee breaks out of his cage, and the X-Men ready themselves for a fight. But Banshee just pulls off the dumb headband he's been wearing the whole time and thanks them for freeing him. Apparently, the Ogre has been using the headband to control him. The end. This doesn't make...
Matt, I know what you're about to say, but before you do, I have to get this out.
Okay.
Why did they draw Banshee's face like that?
Yeah, he looks kind of like a Dr. Seuss character.
Yeah, like a Who from Whoville.
Yes, and now it makes me wonder, what were the racial stereotypes of Irish people in 1967?
Oh,
and is this part of that? Because no one else, Werner Roth has drawn no other human being like this, and will never draw another human being like this.
He looks like an animal.
Yes.
It's so strange.
Yeah, he has like the line between his nose and his mouth is so defined. It is like, it's like how a cat has two separate little chunks of their face.
It's like when you're drawing an orangutan, it looks like a cartoon orangutan.
Pretty wild. And he doesn't look like that when he comes back. Spoiler alert, Banshee comes back. This isn't the last time we'll see the Banshee.
Can't wait.
Look, I've got to talk about this.
Yeah, please.
If the headband wasn't a form of mind control, right? It was just explosives that the Ogre could detonate using like his mechanical suit.
We can go to the tape here, but I thought he said that he was being mind controlled.
No, he says he has been dominated, but then Professor X says, as I mentally sensed, the device would have exploded if we had tampered with it. Hold on.
Yeah, that's way worse.
But here's my problem. If it was a form of mental control, Banshee wouldn't have gone and robbed those places. Ogre didn't want him to rob those places. So if it was a form of mental control, it's ineffective, and Banshee's still a supervillain, right? He's still culpable for robbing those two stores.
Well, I wouldn't classify him as supervillain if he's stealing a painting and a single pouch of tobacco, but
that is like the sort of thing that Batman would nearly kill a man for.
Well, that's Batman. I love the man, but
the only thing he wasn't forced, act of villainy that was forced on him, was when they kidnapped Professor X. And then when he failed, the Ogre had the ability to explode the headband, but didn't. Tried to shoot him with a gun. This headband, I think the headband's a lie. I think Professor X and Banshee just like had a little conversation that we didn't see. That was like, hey, are you sure you want to be a bad guy? And Banshee's like, no, I don't want to be a bad guy. And Professor X is like, hey, I got a way to get you off the hook. Just take that dumb headband off and pretend.
Why don't we start over? It seems like we got off on the wrong foot.
It's interesting. So this Werner Roth costume, though, sticks with Banshee for a really long time.
Yo, he was, despite his face, has an iconic look here. Like that costume, I think, is incredible. I love just the stripes. It's recognizable, even as somebody that has only seen Banshee in like 3 actual comics. And the cartoon show probably once or twice.
I mean, even later, he often doesn't wear a costume, right? Banshee's appearances are so much more as just like Sean Cassidy.
Yeah.
But it is a dope costume. And this whole issue, color-wise, is
Oh
visually
my God.
striking. Because you've got
When-
the orange and red Mimic, the green and yellow Banshee, the purple and pink Ogre, and then the yellow and blue X-Men. It's great.
This is like the Technicolor era, these next few issues. It seems like they really started, like even the backgrounds, they're varying the background colors to match the tone of the person that's highlighted there. It's really, they're playing around with color and patterns in some really fun and weird ways.
What do you think of my favorite Marvel villain of all time, Ogre?
He looks like the guy from the Lockhorns in a superhero costume. Looks like somebody saw Bob Hoskins from the 80s and put a helmet on him.
The Ogre appears later. I think he becomes a part of the Thunderbolts. But he's like an old dude, like an old bedraggled dude with big
Sure.
like long white hair and a big white beard.
He just calls himself that too.
Ogre? Yeah.
He built this big old mechanical suit that does 1,000 things. He can beat an entire team of X-Men with it by himself.
Yeah.
And he said, what's the craziest badass thing I can call myself? The Ogre.
The Ogre. And it's just like a he's got just like a mechanical suit. He's like an Iron Man.
Yeah, but with his face exposed.
Right.
He's an Iron Man you can poke in the eyes.
Yeah, which he later solves by wearing goggles in the Thunderbolts. This might be the last time we ever see him in the X-Men. And I think after that he's only in a handful of other comics. So I think he qualifies for membership in our loser league with
Oh, really?
I think he does.
That's fine. I have another candidate later on this episode.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. So he's going to join
we'll make him fight at the end.
Magor the Killer, who actually is in way more comics than the Ogre is.
Magor is?
Yes.
Oh, I wish he could.
And who the fuck is the name of that cowboy? He's not in X-Men issues. He's in like Khazar issues and I think some other stuff. But
what was his name? Cooper Sharp.
Rick Riley. It's some sort of like Pack Dirksen. It's like
a noir detective name for a cowboy,
right? We'll look that up and when
Burton's
we really
smart guy.
Here's the thing I love about the Ogre is that he's got all the stupidest names for his costume. All his the powers that his costumes has, like his repello ray and his propello boots. There's one point where he's fighting the X-Men and Bobby says, look at that, will you? Rocket boots. And then in the very next panel, Ogre's like, these propello boots are even more maneuverable than you might imagine. So it's like he's saying, like, Bobby's like, oh, look, you got some rocket boots. And he's like, they're not rocket boots. They're propello boots.
You're right. He should be in the loser league.
Yeah, he's really great.
I am going to say it. I am sick of Roy Thomas extremely harshly taking us from the social side of things to the villain's lair where they're putting together a plot. He did it in a couple issues from last episode. He's doing it here again where he just says, okay, that's enough about the X-Men. Let's meet our villain. And the way he says this in this issue is especially annoying to me because I think he's trying to channel Stan Lee and he just doesn't have the juice for it. He says, but lest any mixed up Marvelites be confused as to who the baddies in this epic are, let's switch to a well-concealed hideout in the city and meet the slightly obstreperous Ogre.
Huh. Yeah,
So
we wouldn't
annoying.
have been confused.
Yeah, because you can just go there.
You can just do it. You know, I do have this feeling though that Stan Lee still has a hand on the ball here.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's this moment at the end of the comic where we find out that Banshee's been being controlled by Factor 3. It's the first time the X-Men hear the name Factor 3, and somebody off panel, we don't know who, just a word balloon from off panel says, Factor 3? That sounds like some kind of toothpaste. And knowing what we do about Stan's editorial notes in Roy Thomas comics up till now, I have to assume that is Stan taking a jab at Roy Thomas.
That's him writing in a word bubble.
Yes.
Instead of in editor's note.
Right. All right.
Stan, show him who's boss. Wait, can I point out one more thing?
Please.
Bobby says something incredibly stupid after they first beat the Banshee, I think. He says, he's putt-putting off like a wounded motorboat. But this time, Hank, in more words than he needs to, says, shut up, Bobby. That's very stupid.
He does that a lot in this series of issues, like more and more.
Yeah, they are roasting each other. When the Mimic is out training and being super arrogant about it, they're all just on the hill watching him going like, oh, look at this arrogant fella.
Look at this dipshit. They're learning, like friends do, learning how to roast from each other.
Yes. Yeah. And it's all centered on this one guy. No wonder he tries to fight them. He's a real prick, though, by the way. He calls the professor skinhead, chrome. What's wrong with you, man?
It's so hard to tell. There's this thing in comics, right, of making characters that are larger than life, like in ways that no human would ever be. And I think while the X-Men have some subtleties to their personalities, you can tell Mimic's not going to stick around long because he is just arrogance personified. He has no human being would ever think or act or talk like that, right?
Yeah. He's also apparently still a teenager. I knew he was in college. I thought he was like a 6th year senior or something. He looks 25.
Also, I just want to note here a thing that I think people often forget about Banshee because it's so absurd and obnoxious to think about. Every time he's flying, he's screaming. Anytime he's flying anywhere.
Oh, hey, Matt. Gotta go.
And he was a secret agent for Interpol. We'll find that out. We won't find that out for a very long time, but that's his origin story. He was a secret agent for Interpol, so he's just like screaming his way into missions. I think he probably gets away with it because people are like, what the fuck is that? They're not like, oh, somebody's coming. They're like, what the hell is that noise?
Hey, look, you're about to meet this guy. Don't mention the screaming.
Patrick, I want to hear. There's something I want to tell you about. It's sort of a philosophical question, but I think we can tackle it here together. I want to discuss with you what happens when Titans clash.
Okay.
In issue 29 of the X-Men from December 8th, 1966, written by Roy Thomas, drawn by Werner Roth, inked by John Tartaglione.
Ooh.
Edited by Sam Lee, lettered by Sam Rosen. Some bullshit about Irving Forbush.
You hate Irving Forbush.
I fucking hate it. It's not a funny joke, is the thing. Do you think Irving Forbush is a funny joke?
Oh, I still don't get it. I think what they're trying to do is glean the success that Alfred E. Newman is getting in Mad Magazine at this time.
Okay.
I think that is what they're doing. They keep putting him, like, in Mad Magazine, famously, Alfred E. Newman is responsible for the typos, or their editor, Godfrey. But, like, they have a scapegoat to be, that's also a wacky mascot. And Mad Magazine wants that glory.
Yeah, interesting.
Marvel Comics wants that glory.
I think it sucks. I don't get it. I don't like it at all. All right, so it's winter time. And the X-Men are having a good old-fashioned ice skating sesh. Bobby and Hank are goofing off. Angel and Jean are couples skating. Calvin's being a dick. And Scott tells everybody he forgot his skates. So Cyclops goes off into the woods, remembering how a couple issues back when he accidentally clipped Angel with his optic beams, that he seemed to be able to in an instant lower the intensity of his beams. So this is actually kind of interesting, the idea that they brought this back up, and they're like, well, Scott is pondering this idea. Maybe I'm now able to control my optic beams. And so he goes off into the woods. He takes off his glasses to test it out, and nope, he can't at all. Not even a little bit. And this
actually causes the earth to move.
Yes, he causes a rock slide. And this leads him to, one of these normal sort of these standard Marvel soliloquies, right? About first about how difficult his life is and how he can't be around people, but then he morphs that into how important of a power he has and what responsibility he is.
And if he's truly living up to the great power that he has, it's a real gifted child complex.
That's a good point. I'm sure pretty much every writer at Marvel at the time had a gifted child complex.
Oh, yeah. This is 100% Roy Thomas's inner thoughts about how great of a writer he is, despite being stuck on X-Men. I mean, he's writing all these flowery editor's notes. He's writing all of Hank's lines, which are eloquent.
You're right. And we did say early on that Roy Thomas was had a worse grasp on the X-Men and was maybe a worse plotter, worse idea guy than Stan Lee, but maybe a better line for line writer than Stan Lee. Sometimes I don't feel that way. Roy Thomas has some real bad issues.
He's got some stinkers.
But anyway, all right. So the rock slide that that Cyclops causes wakes up an android in his base deep below ground. This android is the Super-Adaptoid, a recent Avengers villain. This reminds him somehow getting rocks and dust dropped on his head, which is a very funny panel because it's just it's obscuring his whole face and body. It's just this pile of dust falling on him, and he's saying, "What being would dare?" But it somehow reminds him of his greater goal, Pat, to evolve other beings into androids.
Yes, his given mission from AIM was to take out the Avengers.
Yeah.
And then his secondary
Step
mission.
one.
And I don't know if this was pre-established or if this is just to give him a reason to come back in the X-Men.
Right.
And step 2 is find other people. They have to be willing to be transformed into super-adaptoids that aren't quite as powerful as him.
How do you turn a human into an android, and why would you call that evolve?
Techno-organics.
Okay.
Idiot.
Which won't be introduced until the 1980s, but clearly existed.
Yeah, I mean, this is a super-adaptoid. It's pretty revolutionary. I don't know if you knew this, but it can imitate the powers of other heroes.
So, Super-Adaptoid emerges from his caves, and he watches the X-Men ice skate for a while until only Bobby is left. And he watches Bobby use his powers, turn into Iceman. So Super-Adaptoid tries to sneak up on him, and he's too heavy, so he falls through the ice. And of course that alerts Bobby that he's there. He turns around, he freezes him, and then just to add insult to injury, covers him in snow and then runs away.
He says, "What is this glassy substance?" He knows what glass is, but he doesn't know what ice is.
Upon returning to the X mansion, Bobby tells everybody what just happened, and nobody believes him. They accuse him of daydreaming, and like they gaslight him to the point where he thinks that he's like, maybe you're right. Maybe this didn't happen to me. They're superheroes. They fight like magic guys and aliens and shit. Why are they like, Bobby's probably lying about an android that attacked him? An android that we know fought the Avengers was probably in the news.
To be fair, he is saying, hey, just about a quarter mile from our superhero headquarters in Westchester, New York, a 10-foot robot happened to also be living and came out of the ground.
The moment that you guys left. Also, that's so this is funny. This is not the only time. I want us to remember this. This is not the only time that Cyclops fires his I-beams just like wildly. It destroys something on the X-Men's property, and that summons a supervillain. This is not the only time that happens. Okay, so they move on. They're like, Bobby's full of shit, and they move on and they start a training session. And Mimic is still being a dick. So again, they all fight him, and then it's just gotten too much. So Professor X kicks him out. He's like, we cannot keep doing this. Sounds like me and my ex-girlfriend, am I right? So Cyclops notices that Professor X is distracted right after this. And we see Professor X doing experiments in his lab and thinking about that door. Remember the door from last issue? It's back.
Yeah. The forbidden door.
The door. Maybe it should join the loser league. It's now a recurring character. No, they're only in one issue. Okay, so now that the Mimic is gone, the X-Men start having fun again. They go to play some football as friends when the Super-Adaptoid shows up. It's one of those cinematic moments where one of them throws the football and the Super-Adaptoid's hand grabs it, and then the camera pans over and it's him standing there.
Great moment.
Using the power.
Oh! A 10-foot green robot.
Bobby's like, see? I told you! Now he's got our football. Did you want that to happen? Okay, so using the powers he stole from the Avengers, he handily defeats the X-Men and begins to turn them into androids. Again, still, when the Mimic returns, literally, he's not turning up like as a hero, like showing up to save the day. He shows up. He's coming back to make fun of the X-Men.
Yeah, he was just going to give them a piece of his mind.
Yeah, and even when he sees them being beaten, he's like, oh, hey, I'd love to turn into an android. You can do it to me. It's just like a complete... It's like...
this guy sucks.
But he finally has this change of heart when Super-Adaptoid, while transforming him, is like, and then you'll kill all the mutants. And he's like, wait, I don't want to kill the mutants. Hold on.
To beat him up.
I just want to beat him up a lot. I don't want to kill him. So Mimic starts fighting back. The two match each other power for power. It's really just like, and now I've got my shield throwing. Oh, and now I've got my optic beams. Oh, I'll counter your optic beams with my repulsor rays, whatever. And Super-Adaptoid is like, oh, maybe I'd be, rather than turning this guy into an android, maybe I'd be better off just taking all his powers and making myself more powerful. So he grabs the Mimic, he starts scanning him, but the process creates some kind of feedback loop, and they both lose all of their powers and start plummeting to Earth. The X-Men save Calvin as he falls, but they let the Super-Adaptoid, drop into the water. And it turns out Calvin finally learned the power of friendship, and the Mimic is no more.
He lost his other powers, though.
Yes.
Okay, if the Mimic lost his powers at the end, why is he still wearing those dumbass glasses?
Just take them off right away.
That would be the first thing I'd do.
Yeah, I'm sick of these things.
I look like an idiot. Here's
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. You go ahead.
I mean, every Mimic story is the same, right? It's the Mimic is a dick. The X-Men beat him up. or he fights the X-Men. Sometimes he beats them up. Sometimes they beat him up. He loses his powers and he learns that he was a dick the whole time. And then next issue, he comes, like, he'll be back again, I'm sure, with powers, being a dick, fight the X-Men, and then lose his powers.
Real arrogant. Here's my thing, Matt. My one note that I wrote down on this in all caps is bad issue. It's really, I don't, it's, okay. Do you remember when we all liked the Avengers movies? And then we kept going to see them. And then all of a sudden one of them was like really action packed start. And then you think it's going to calm down, but actually somebody in the calm down part is a bad guy. And then they go right into a new action sequence, and that goes into a car chase. And then that goes into like a 5-minute conversation that erupts into another fight. And it's just like action.
Sure.
That's what this felt like. It was like, why are we following all of these weird whims instead of just having a cohesive plot? Why are we and they're beautiful action scenes. Like Werner Roth is doing some great poses. He's doing some really exciting action. I think he's catching it right at the right moment. Like, it feels alive, but you just don't get a breath even during the point where the X-Men are supposed to be having fun and goofing around. Cyclops is off blasting the tops off of mountains. Like,
yeah, but what you like, I thought, I'm surprised that you feel this way, because what you like is the these little moments you get of the X-Men just being people. And there's a lot of that here. They go ice skating together. The Cyclops has this little soliloquy. They play football together. Iceman's bad at ice skating, and so then he gets nude.
He does. There's a really Iceman runs in, tells all of the X-Men except for Scott, because Scott was off on a mountain blasting off. Iceman runs in and says, guys, there's a 10-foot robot outside. We got to go take care of this. And they're like, I don't think so. Scott walks in the door at that moment, and Iceman says, Scott, you were out there. Didn't you see the 10-foot robot? And he says, no, Bobby, but I did find your clothes. And with this great look of shame on his face, hands the pile of clothes over to Bobby.
Yeah.
He is still wearing his underwear. He learned his lesson from that one issue where he was fully nude the entire time.
This is a big Iceman issue. He also, we raised the Iceman cometh count to 2.
Yep, he says it again.
And I think
on the splash page.
And I think like the Bobby and Hank both being bad at skating and goofing on each other about it is really cool. Like, their friendship rules.
Yes. Yeah. It's very cute. They have very clever barbs back and forth at each other.
I kind of think that's the strength of this Roy Thomas era, is like the bright light in some of the confusing, miasma. I think the darkness is Hank and Bobby just palling around, which we get kind of a lot of.
Yeah. It's especially in the next couple of issues. A thing that I find really fascinating in this issue, and I mean this legitimately fascinating, Bobby's not good at ice skating. What number one, what an adorable character detail that this guy. But number two, it's like could Superman win a fist fight question, right? It's that, is this person so reliant on their overwhelming power that they didn't actually learn the tactics that they would need without those powers?
So the Superman win a fist fight question, I've been reading a lot of Excalibur recently, and Captain Britain has is just a big dumb oaf with a ton of power. He's not dumb, but he's very headstrong, and he relies on his power so much that oftentimes that's exactly what takes him down. Like, he'll rush in, he'll punch somebody so hard, and then just get his ass kicked, because that's all he had in him is one good punch. If his punch doesn't do it, and he sometimes knows this, he talks about it sometimes, like if his punch doesn't do it, he's pretty much fucked. But here's another interesting thing about Iceman that we don't see very often in the comics is his ice slide leaves a trail of broken ice blocks behind, which is how the Super-Adaptoid finds the X-Mansion, which, number one, is cool because it should. It's like finding
Yeah.
Spider-Man's webs, like, dissolving around the city. Number two, would that not just always lead everybody right to the X-Mansion?
Well, it's winter, right? You got to assume that they
Okay.
melt a lot quicker most of the year.
Okay, so wouldn't that lead everyone to the X-Mansion in the winter?
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's move on to issue number. Yeah.
Matt, I'm going to stop you again.
You love to do that.
I know. I was doing it on purpose. Hang on. Let me find one more note that I can talk about.
You don't even have something. You just wanted to interrupt me. You don't even have anything.
Wait, here's a good one.
Okay.
There's a point at which the Super-Adaptoid grabs the Mimic and just starts spinning him violently in a circle really, really fast. And the Mimic's like, whoa, I'm going to black out. And he's not throwing him somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
He's just grabbing him and spinning him in the air. Which Avenger did he get that power from?
Was it his Hawkeye's power? His Captain America? His Goliath?
Well, yeah, hang on. While we're at it, why did he grab Hawkeye's powers?
I know, Hawkeye doesn't have powers. He just has arrows. And so he doesn't, yeah, so he literally, like, the power is, oh, I've got arrows on my back. He doesn't even have, like, a bow.
He's good. He doesn't have a bow. He specifically says, I forgot my bow. All right, let's move on to issue 30, Matt.
Oh, well, if you're ready now.
Yeah, finally.
So issue 30 is called The Warlock Wakes. It's released January 10th, 1967. This is a guest artist, and it kind of feels like a total filler issue, right? When as much as any of these feel like filler issues, just most of them. It is edited by Stan Lee, written by Roy Thomas, drawn by Jack Sparling, inked by John Tartaglia, lettered by Artie Simak, fuck Irving Forbush. Well, the issue opens in medias res as the X-Men have been sucked into a weird void, and a giant hand is pulling Marvel Girl toward it. Angel holds her hand as long as he can, but they become separated, and Jean runs into Professor X, who's also in the void. Hey. Soon, their attacker reveals himself, and it's a weird magic guy named Warlock. And not that X-Men Warlock, and not that Marvel Warlock, but just a guy named Warlock.
It's a lot like the Scarecrow.
He's had a crush on Jean for many years. Remember, she's a teenager, and kidnapped her to make her the Guinevere to his Arthur. And he's kidnapped the professor for some reason that never really becomes clear. When they come out of the void, they're in New England, which I don't know why, but Professor X recognizes it as the hills of New England.
There's a castle.
He nullifies Xavier's power and somehow charms Jean. He tells them that none of this is magic, but it's science and everything's mutants. But still summons flying horses for them to ride. As they fly by, Angel catches up with them, and they all travel to a cave where they get on hover bikes and continue to fly into a castle that's armed with medieval knights holding machine guns.
Yes.
We flash back as the Warlock tells us he's actually the legendary Merlin. And a couple years ago, he fought Thor. Then he tricked Thor into thinking he was in a coma, and now that Thor's off-world, he's escaped to conquer the world and make Jean Grey his mutant empress of the Earth. Using his mutant mind, he invented a machine to turn the minds of humans back to medieval, so they can't get science, and all of that makes sense.
Sorry, Matt. This is a great plan, and you're underselling it.
What he's doing is he's turning everybody's minds back to medieval, so that they can't get him with modern.
he's making them forget modern science,
Mhm.
and then he is going to be their savior by presenting them with modern science.
So modern science is going to be there. So they
Yeah, but they
forget
won't.
modern science.
They'll forget it.
It's not like they don't have the intellect to use and understand it or to invent it. People's minds weren't different in medieval times than they are now. The same brains.
Oh, they were driving cars?
No, but they could. But had they had cars around, they could have understood and worked them and then learned how to make them themselves. They wouldn't have been like physically incapable of understanding a car.
Some sort of metal horse?
They might have thought that at first, and then they would have started taking it apart and it's like, no, it's more like a clock. Oh, wait, I can figure out how to do this stuff. Oh, a little explosion. Like, they would have figured it out. They're humans. They have human brains. You can't just turn your minds back to medieval.
I love your description of, oh, it's like a clock. Whoops, an explosion.
Did they have exploding clocks back then? I'm sure there's combustion clocks. No, okay. So, most of this issue is just Warlock showing you what powers he can do. So he demonstrates that he has the power to cause hallucinations, to control minds, to teleport, to fire beams. He could do fucking everything. Professor X Professor X, whose powers are being, suppressed, starts concentrating really, really hard and falls into a coma, which freaks everyone out until the rest of the X-Men show up. And it turns out Professor X was doing that. Again, not really explained. He made him come out of the void with his brain power. And he also apparently telepathically filled him in on the situation because they know exactly what's going on. So Warlock then challenged them to a gladiator duel and says if they win, he'll stop trying to take over the world.
A la Space Jam.
As they walk into the arena, Beast is already in aggressive mode. He's already in beast mode. He picks up a guy and throws him at Warlock. Like, that's his first move. He just grabs a guard and chucks him at Warlock, who...
Yeah, not one of the gladiators, just a guard that's letting him out.
He's like, I'll solve this. I'm going to throw a man at you. But the guy just bounces off of Warlock's telekinetic shield, another power he has. Then a few guys on horses with laser lances charge, and the X-Men just kind of wreck them and then start to smash up the place and leap out of the gladiatorial arena and chase Warlock around the castle. They chase him through some, catacombs where, they run into certain obstacles. Like, their way gets barred by, like, a cell door, and then, like, projectiles fire at them. And as they start to catch up to them, Warlock uses his powers to knock a tower over on top of them, but they escape all these, narrowly. And the fight ends by Beast jumping on him and wrapping his cape around him. And somehow that weakens him enough that Professor X can regain all of his psychic and put Warlock into a coma. He gets his psychic back and nobody turns into medieval.
Wrap him up like a mummy and carry him out.
Yeah, they do that. They assume now that he's back in his coma and he'll be in it for a millennia.
Just like he was a few years ago when Thor took care of him.
Absolutely nothing in this issue makes any sense. They don't explain why Warlock is calling himself a mutant or how he says that his horses are actually mutant. He says, like, again, it's just using these concepts as explanatory tools without any definition of the concepts, which is why I'm speaking the way I am, right? He's going to turn their minds to medieval. It's not magic. He's using a science to be mutants. Like, this is how this issue feels.
Here's my all caps note for this issue, Matt. Good issue.
What? Okay, I want to hear your counter argument.
I loved this one so much. It is without a doubt a filler issue, right? And they even say up top, like, they explain that Werner Roth is working on a much more complex story that we'll get next month. But this month, they brought in someone else to take his place. Mm-hmm. kicks off with at first I was really annoyed with these very loud and crowded panels, but then as the issue
Right.
goes on, he kind of figures it out, and it gets a lot more. It doesn't get simpler, it just gets a little more harmonious. All the different elements that he's adding, the complicated patterns on everyone's clothing, and I just
and modern layouts too, right? Like rather than just like a
yes,
6 or 9 panel grid, he's doing a little bit of not very experimental stuff, but he's doing a little bit with making certain panels bigger, having panels wrap around each other.
Yeah, he's got tall, skinny panels. He's taking up different lengths of each page. He's using
really horny for Jean Grey.
Also. Oh yeah, absolutely loves it. This is
a lot of
drawing.
A lot of boobs, a lot of ass, like foreground, like very front of panel, just a giant Jean Grey ass or giant Jean Grey boobs. Well, years before this is like the norm in comics.
Yeah, and clearly spending a lot more time on her face than anyone else's.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Except for the Warlocks. The Warlock is an intimidating looking dude. He is... again, I keep mentioning these patterns, but he has like this cape that has all these tiny little stars and circles that they had to draw individually in each panel. Mm-hmm. And then there's this one panel where he's mad, he's casting some sort of spell, and he's got his arms up by his face, pointing his fingers out like he's a wizard, and the background is red. He's kind of lit up in red. It's really I don't know, just it's very science fiction-y. It's very not science fiction. It's very fantasy based, and it is them just going on a little fantasy adventure. I also, what a cool villain! What a cool base he has, an underground lair in New England that has its own castle and coliseum. What cool henchmen he has! Not only are they dressed in like medieval splint armor and carrying Tommy guns, they get involved. They have thoughts on the way that he's running his business and whether it's a good idea or whether it's going to doom them. Yeah, I thought this was fun. They wager the earth on this competition.
But there's not really a competition. It takes place in like one page, and it's just some guys come out with laser lances.
Yeah. And they get handily beaten because the point of this issue is just like, look at this crazy world that this mutant has created that the X-Men now have to deal with.
I mean, I appreciate that you like it. I think it was really trash. I think again, it's just there's just a lot of non-explanations for every single thing that happens. Like, I don't know why he had to add in there things like, actually, this isn't magic. This is mutant.
Everything's mutant, Matt.
And again, this whole idea of like changing everybody's brain. And in the flashback, they're all like wearing medieval garb, as if when you make everyone forget technology, they'll immediately become medieval peasants. Like, that doesn't... There's not like a medieval person locked inside all of us that worships a king.
Waiting to be unleashed.
Yeah, exactly.
The peasant inside me.
I know. Well, actually, I guess I guess in the US we are finding out there is a medieval person locked inside of a lot of us waiting to worship a king.
Is this political? Speaking of, why do they call the state police on these guys? They make a point to say, we called the state police for this one at the end when they're locking up all the medieval guards with guns.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe this is who was president in 1966?
LBJ, I believe.
Yeah, I guess this isn't before the anti-federal kind of movement kicked in. That wouldn't be for another like 10 years.
Oh, I thought usually they reach out to like the city police. Just local.
Oh, I see. They're going up a step.
Yeah, and I feel like the state police, well, around here at least, I don't feel like the state police are more equipped to handle an army of medieval knights with guns than the local police.
Okay, here's the thing. I went to look up Jack Sparling's. I wasn't sure if he was kind of like an old guard of comics or if he was like a new young gun at this time. Turns out he was around the same age as all the other dudes, but I'm shocked by their birth dates. Do you know when, say, Jack Kirby was born?
Jack Kirby was born in
Don't
like
look
the
it up.
20s. I want to say the 20s or maybe early 30s. No, it had to be maybe the teens even. Like
He was
World
born
War
in the
One.
teens, 1917.
Yeah, okay.
And Jack Sparling was born in 1916. These comics are old, dude.
Yes, these are full adults. There's a whole, you can really dig into, like, in the 60s, there was a whole, because they were pumping out comic books like crazy. There were a bunch of major publishers. Being a comic book writer was sort of like a shameful occupation because you were a full-grown man. You were in your 40s or 50s at this point.
Yeah.
And this is what you went into the office to do every day. People would pretend they were accountants or tell their friends they were accountants because they didn't want to admit they were comic book writers.
It's just wild that these guys are in their 50s. But it also explains why they're always so mad at kids in these books. But it just brings into like stark relief that these comics are 60 years old. That's a long time ago.
Two very cool art moments I want to mention. Number one, Beast on a horse. Incredible panel where Beast beats up the Lancer that's coming at him, takes control of his horse. The horse is rearing back as he tries to tame it. Just really, it's a beautiful horse. Beast is a beautiful man. Beast on Beast. Don't cut that out. Just a really great shot. There's another thing that Jack Sparling does here. They're chasing after the Warlock. A series of bars drops down over the door that they're running towards, and Hank's head bounces off of it, and there is an illustrated plang right there. I think it is perfectly placed. The way that it's drawn and the sounding out of it is like Don Martin level illustrated onomatopoeia. Speaking of Mad Magazine, I think this panel belongs right there. Plang!
I also want to say, before we move on to the next issue, this is where... So I've mostly been reading in the Mighty Marvel Masterworks editions so far. This is where the Mighty Marvel Masterworks end, for now. So there is one coming out in July that covers this era. But my next book is the regular Marvel Masterworks, which starts on issue 32. So issues 30 and 31... Pat wouldn't let me read from his collection that he spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on. He said my hands is always too dirty.
They're very expensive, Matt, and you were always eating peanut butter and jelly.
So I had to find these two issues in the woods, and that's how I read them.
Buried with some porno mags.
Yeah, exactly. My issue 31 was pretty dirty, so I didn't get to see a lot of it. So Pat, will you tell us about issue 31? We must destroy the Cobalt Man!
Well, if I'm going to talk about it, let me do the title.
Okay, you do the title.
We must destroy the Cobalt Man!
Yours was better.
Good as Gold editing by Stan Lee. Solid silver scripting by Roy Thomas. Platinum plated penciling by Werner Roth. Iridium bright inking by John Tartaglione, and lead-lined lettering by Sam Rosen. I see that our Irving Forbush credit was cut off on our note here.
What do you mean? It was my issue was just it was ripped out.
Somebody must have just peeled that thin strip of paper out. Cover date April 1967, release date February 14th, 1967. The X-Men are just coming off an intense training session when Professor X gives them the weekend off for all their hard work. He tasks Scott with bringing some textbooks back to Jean at Metro to give him a leg up in his romantic competition with Warren. Professor knows. Also, he has some secret experiments that he can only do alone.
I gotta be alone now.
Yeah, I'm sorry. He specifically says, for every man, there are some things that he must do alone.
He's jacking it, right?
At Metro College, Jean is hanging out with the true villain of the X-Men, Ted Roberts, whose brother Ralph just showed up to visit. The two start trying to show off their athletic skills when Ralph bangs his head on a pole, and instead of going to the doctor, they go to the diner. Ralph starts telling them that he's experimenting with Cobalt in his new startup lab when Warren and Scott show up to hang out. They all head to Ralph's lab except Warren, who bows out of the Jean love triangle and heads to a club called the Monkey's Paw, where he meets a woman named Candy Southern.
Candy Southern's here!
Candy, is this a name that we continue to know?
Oh my gosh, yes. Candy Southern is a big old part of Marvel history.
Great. She seems like a dreamboat.
Her and Angel, they stay together for years. She'll be part of the comics for like 20 years.
No shit. Does she travel the comics, or is she an X-Men rogue?
I mean, she travels in the sense of like she follows Angel to the Champions and the Defenders.
Oh, so she's just
the X-Men. She's like just Angel's girlfriend. I think
she's a sidekick.
She also has a superhero identity, but like it's a little confusing. I think it might just be like, from what I'm reading, I think she's like a hologram. It wasn't really her.
Okay,
but
she's looking for attention.
But yeah, she'll stick around. She'll be in X Factor. She'll be in the X-Men. She'll be around.
Good. She seems to treat Warren right, so I'm glad that from the jump we can safely like her.
It also feels like that's Roy Thomas saying like, I don't like this. I don't like this love triangle. It sucks.
Yeah. Well, so they said the reason Warren leaves is because Jean is surrounded by 3 other men, and he knows that his odds are not great, right? Not because he's not charming, but just statistically, he's got a 1 in 4 chance, and he immediately leaves and goes to it's a nightclub, a disco,
but a nightclub where only one man is allowed in at a time.
The man is horny. He's looking to get something done. So I'm happy for him. Meanwhile, across the city, Bobby and Hank are at the Coffee A Go-Go with Zelda and Vera watching Bernard the poet, the resident poet of the coffee shop, play with a yo-yo that he is opining about. Back to Scott and Jean, we find out that Ralph Roberts wants to use Cobalt to create a machine to dig to the center of the Earth, but really, as he reveals to Ted, he's making a Cobalt version of Iron Man's armor and calling himself Cobalt Man. After he puts it on, he starts to feel the concussion from bumping his head earlier and decides he's going to become Iron Man's rival. He gets very quickly drunk with power. Ted tries to reason with Ralph, but Ralph slaps him hard.
Yes!
And he is
finally!
As somebody had to do it. I'm glad.
I'm glad it was a man dressed in Cobalt.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad it was a large, heavy metal arm that slapped him across the face. Drunk on his power, he is immediately overtaken with thoughts of destroying Iron Man. But first, he has to destroy his lab so no one else can try to recreate the Cobalt Man suit. Jean and Scott hear all the destruction in the lab, slip into costume, and rush to investigate the scene. They don't realize that this is Ralph in the costume and assume that Cobalt Man has harmed Ralph and Ted, and for some reason care about that. Cobalt Man, meanwhile, realizes that these must be friends of Iron Man because they're wearing masks and fighting crime, so he attacks them. They go back and forth a bit until Cobalt Man shoots a big metal box down from the ceiling on top of Scott and Jean and then flies away. Scott, trapped under the rubble, uses his new wristwatch communicator to reach out to the professor for help, letting him know that Cobalt Man is headed directly to Stark Industries. Professor hears this, assesses the situation, and decides that this is not enough of an emergency to interrupt his ongoing secret experiments, but he'll contact the rest of the X-Men for him. I don't know why they don't have communicator watches, but he reaches out to them telepathically. Bobby, Hank, and Warren are all interrupted during dates and have to rush to help Jean and Scott. Jean and Scott escape from the rubble and manage to follow an injured and stupid Ted Roberts as he tracks down his brother in a hippie van. Bobby, Hank, and Warren at the same time arrive at Stark Industries and start looking around and find Cobalt Man because he's monologuing too loud about how he's going to defeat the X-Men. A fight ensues while Ted helplessly whines about how his brother will blow up if they don't stop him. Cobalt Man has reached his peak power delusion when his power source is covered by ice all of the sudden, followed by an optic blast to his chest. This successfully diffuses the power source and the bomb that it created as Ralph falls to the ground in his armor, and Warren digs him out of the river so he doesn't drown. Ralph seems to have seen the error of his ways, which is good enough for Ted to look the other way about the whole thing. This definitely gives Jean the ick. End of issue.
Here's the thing, and these are 2025 prices. So I don't even know what they were in the 1960s, but I imagine the difference was much, much higher. But in 2025, iron is 4 cents a pound. Steel is 40 cents a pound.
Okay.
Titanium is $6 a pound. Cobalt is $15.39 a pound.
Ooh.
Where the fuck is Ralph Roberts getting enough money to make a giant Cobalt suit?
Maybe they're rich kids. That would explain the fucking
why sucks
shithead
so
Ted, right?
Yeah.
Dickhead. He does mention that he was working under Tony Stark, and then Stark said something, and now he no longer works for Tony Stark in his own lab.
I think it's interesting that we have a issue centered around Iron Man stuff, Iron Man themes. Cobalt Man considers himself Iron Man's enemy. Ralph Roberts was Tony Stark's assistant. The major action takes place at Stark Industries, and yet they leave Iron Man out of the issue.
I know. They do draw him in one very small panel just to say, in case you didn't know, Iron Man's on vacation, which is why he's not here. Mid-issue.
Do you think you seem disappointed by that?
I think it's strange. It feels like they took what was supposed to be an Iron Man story and put the X-Men in it instead. But you know that there was something they were leading up to, because Jean kept talking about how Ted is so driven by his brother and their competitive spirit. So
yeah,
they were going to do something with Ted's brother this whole time.
There's not been a ton of foreshadowing in these books, but this is an example of it. And the other example of it is Professor X and his door, which we won't find out till next issue. But now that we know what it is, in what way do you think that him feeding rats from a test tube was helping?
I think he's doing a lot of things down there.
Okay.
What we're about to get to next issue is just one of the many strange experiments he's running and behind this forbidden door.
So this has nothing to do with what's behind the door. I also think it's interesting. We do get a lot of behind the scenes X-Men stuff this issue. Them goofing around, them out of costume and stuff. One thing I think is really interesting is when Beast is getting ready, he's talking to Bobby with his, bombastic, pretentious big word language, right? And he thinks to himself like, I can't stop myself, I guess. Like, this is, maybe I don't know where like the Beast ends and Hank McCoy begins, which implies that much like, Clark Kent pretending to be mild-mannered, the Beast uses the big words and the quips and stuff as part of his disguise.
Oh, I was reading that as him saying like, I have this power, I'm sort of a freak, and my way to make up for that, my way to mask that is just by overusing my extensive vocabulary.
Well, but then I feel like he'd be saying the opposite. So he says, there I go again. Maybe there is no more Hank P. McCoy. Maybe he's been supplanted by the omnipresent Beast. So clearly he associates the big words with Beast and not with Hank.
Yeah, but he talks like that all the time.
I know. It seems a little shoehorned in, I guess.
Yeah. Or I mean, if you are like maybe he's anxiety ridden and he's just like he's taking a small detail and assuming other people see it magnified.
Well, there also becomes a point in only a couple years where Beast and Hank McCoy are no longer separate, right? Like Beast no longer has.
Right. There's no way for him to keep two identities.
Yes, and you know,
don't want to spoil anything.
He becomes a much more prominent superhero in the Marvel universe, and doesn't just no longer has a secret identity. So,
but for now, he's just a skin man.
He's just a skin man. Yeah, I don't know. How'd you feel about this issue?
It felt out of, like, reading it. I was like, you didn't want the X-Men to be in this story. There's nothing super unique about it. I like that they're digging into the personal stuff a bit. We get all of them trying to find dates, which is fun. And that takes up more of the issue than you would expect, actually.
Yeah, I guess this is the issue where they really start dealing with the romantic stuff. Like, Ted becomes much less of a concern in Jean's romantic life. Warren opts out. Warren meets Candy. We get, I guess it's the next issue where there's also a lot of romance in the next issue, huh?
Yeah. I was just going to say, if you want to talk about their romantic lives blossoming, then we should talk about issue 32, Beware the Juggernaut, my son.
Yeah, I do want to talk about issue 32, Beware the Juggernaut, but I wish you wouldn't call me that.
I don't know how to get out of that joke,
okay.
This is the title they wrote for it. I'm not sure where my son comes in. But written by Stan Lee proudly presents and even edits a Roy Thomas, Werner Roth cataphonically cataclysmic co-production. Inked by John Tartaglione, lettered by Artie Simek, catered by Honest Irv. Cover, May 1967, release date, March 14th, 1967. We open on a surprise 18th birthday party for Bobby at Coffee A Go-Go. The splash page has us looking at the X-Men and their friends celebrating this birthday
with a cake.
In a window with a cake.
Don't
in
give
a window.
Them cake. We know what happens when the X-Men have a cake.
And then in the background of the splash page is a brick wall with the Juggernaut's ominous shadow and two white eyes on that shadow cast against it. Bobby and his frequent date Zelda are flirting pretty heavily. Bernard, the resident poet at Coffee A Go-Go, writes a poem for Bobby in exchange for a plate of food. Hank
different poem
doesn't
than
want
normal. It's not like his weird, like reading a shopping list or whatever. It's kind of like a sonnet.
Yes, all the hippies are pretty mad about it. But the X-Men are very happy because they can finally understand one of his poems. Music is playing. Hank does not want to dance, but Jean and Scott are dancing on the floor in silence, thinking about how much they pine for each other.
Yeah.
Warren enters with Candy Southern, his new gal pal. Meanwhile, the professor reveals to us, the reader, what his secret experiment has been. He's had his stepbrother, Kane Marco, the Juggernaut, locked in his forbidden room, restrained and in a coma.
What a fucking creep.
He's a psychopath.
Yeah.
Professor X reveals, again, to us, the reader, that he turned Marco over to the authorities, but later gained custody of him to see if he can reverse the power Marco was given. He is a connected man.
Yeah, yeah.
Back at the coffee shop, the Satan's Saints biker gang, led by Rock and Redbone. my two new nominees for the Loser League burst through the window of the coffee shop on their motorcycles and start wreaking havoc, explaining that they're doing this because Zelda turned one of them down for a date. The X-Men manage to use their team training to dispatch of the bikers without revealing their mutant powers at all. Bobby is able to slip to fall down to the floor and then ice up the floor. Scott and Warren coordinate to flip a table and send a biker flying into the air.
That's cool moment. I'm sorry to interrupt. That's such a cool moment. Is like they see a guy coming and both of them react like as one to turn a table up so he accidentally ramps up and off of it. That's such a cool move.
Stuck in the chandelier. It is great. And it's they justify it too in the moment. They're like, thank God for our training. We were on the same frequency about that. Jean telekinetically disorients and crashes two bikers. Hank uses his agility to win a battle of chicken with the remaining biker. The police show up and take all the Satan's saints to jail. Bobby, upon walking Zelda home, gets a kiss from her. He is thrilled.
Way.
I know. Warren gets invited up to Candy's for Coco, and they flirt real hard.
He even says, "Till then, mother hen," which you know what that means in 1966.
Oof, that guy is...
Sorry, 1967 now.
Off his rocker. Meanwhile, Scott and Jean go for a stroll through the park. Scott finally reveals his private fears about his powerful eyes to Jean. Jean expresses sympathy, and they both think to themselves that the other must love them. Back at the mansion...
I want to pause here.
Yeah.
This is such a nice moment. It is like the very first real Jean and Scott moment we ever get.
It is a huge step forward for 31 issues now. They have just thought to themselves. They have inner monologued about how the other must like them and how they could never truly express their feelings, but they know that it would work out if they did. And here's not the feeling they should be expressing, but at least a feeling that they're sharing with each other.
It always felt a little contrived too, because it was like, we don't see them really interact beyond combat, right? They don't talk to each other very much. When they do, it's kind of awkward. So it's just like, oh, they are attracted to each other. That must be all this is. And then the first moment they get alone on panel to just, spend time together, they're immediately digging into their feelings, and it feels very natural. Both of them both sound a lot like them. Like, it's not like, oh, this is just a romantic conversation put into their mouth. They sound very much like themselves, and like they're bouncing off of each other emotionally.
Yeah. It very much reads like two young people learning about that side of romantic relationships, like the ability to confide in somebody and have a partner in a struggle.
Like, it's bigger than dancing and smooching. It's about sharing a burden.
Right. Beautiful. Funny stuff. Back at the mansion, the professor has set up his machine to sap Juggernaut's powers, but something goes wrong. An explosion leaves the professor unconscious and frees a now conscious Juggernaut. Juggernaut realizes that from this explosion, he also has Charles's mental powers now and feels nothing can stop him, but his first act is to get revenge on the X-Men. So he hides in the mansion, expecting them to come back soon. The X-Men do come back soon and sense that something's wrong. And after some confusion that leads them to attacking each other in the dark, they wisen up and decide to check the only place they haven't, the professor's forbidden lab.
Ooh.
But even with their raised awareness, Juggernaut ambushes them. He pops out and throws a bunch of wooden crates at Warren and knocks him out, uses his new telepathic powers to figure out what Plan F is, a plan to flank the enemy. And he sees it coming, taking out Bobby and Hank. He bonks Scott on the head really, really hard. And then he uses his new mental bolt power to knock Jean out. Juggernaut then receives a mental message that Factor 3 is the organization that helped wake him up and caused the explosion that set him free. They request his presence. He begrudgingly accepts, understanding that it is his best chance at world domination. The X-Men all come to a short time later and find Professor X. He's still unconscious and barely breathing. They get him to bed and they ponder how they could possibly take on the Juggernaut again. To be continued. Wait. To be continued.
At the end, they say, we've never faced an adversary who possessed such mind-staggering might. Yes, you did! Not only did you just do it, you fought Juggernaut once before!
You're scared.
This is not your first time fighting Juggernaut. Anyway, the Satan Saints battle is so funny.
It's so good.
Just a bunch of guys on motorcycles driving around. Again, written by a 50-year-old dude. So it's clearly just like, what's that? Not Rebel Without a Cause, the other one. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's called The Wild One.
The Wild Bunch?
The Wild One. It is a
Wild Things?
It's a Marlon Brando film from 1953, and it's just like a motorcycle gang just takes over a town and just starts fucking with people.
And does a stranger come into town and beat the hell out of him?
No, I think it's more like, if I remember correctly, it's more like Marlon Brando's character starts kind of changing his mind about what's going on. And it's more of one of those movies from that time that was just about just like outlaw motorcycle gangs and the havoc they can cause on an unsuspecting little town.
See, yeah, just the an adult's idea of a scary gang.
yes, but that was in the 1950s, and this is,
Sure, they were adults then too, and they still are. So this is what
and they still want to make the point. They're still like, hey, just so you guys know, we gotta be careful about these guys. They might come in and take over a whole building.
They also, Roy Thomas wants to have the same spite for coffee shop hippies in Greenwich Village that Stan Lee and Jack Kirby did, but again, he just does not have the juice. Like, he does not have the spite, the pure hatred for hippies that Jack Kirby did. So when he takes 2 issues with multiple panels to explain that Bernard, the poet, tries to get food and drinks for free a lot, it just doesn't land.
Yeah, like that's the new bit of Bernard's character is, he's just a normal poet, but he is hungry.
He's a moocher.
Yeah.
Also, Hank says he can't dance because he has size 13 shoes. That is not that big.
Isn't it?
I wear size 12.
Oh. I wear 9.5s. So it's big to me, but it's not like superpower big.
Yeah, like I am a stout man and I have wide feet to support that. So they're a little large and they are one size down from
right,
from these freakish opposable toes.
Right, to Stan Lee and Roy Thomas. They'd look at you and be like, "Oh my god, a superhuman. He should fight crime with those things."
That's J.R.R. Tolkien did the same thing.
Oh, right.
With hobbits. Just stout men have large feet and never wear shoes. Hate wearing shoes.
What do you think about this return of Jug? I feel like this is really fumbling the ball on the potential that is set up with Juggernaut. Yeah, because I mean, he was this guy obsessed with revenge and has had this very strong characterization. And in this one, he's just like, now I want to take over the world.
Well, okay. Yes, that part is sweet. Maybe it's the therapy. I loved this issue. They set up this huge machine that Kane Marco is strapped to, still in his Juggernaut uniform for some reason. They haven't tried to take him out of that. So as an artist, you have to try to conceptualize what it looks like for a psychic man to zap cosmic power out of an unconscious giant.
Okay.
And the machine that does that, the tools and monitors that go along with it. And that was so interesting to me. I think a lot of these gadgets that they've drawn for the X-Men in the past have kind of been just like, the fuck is this thing? This looks like a telephone cord that it looks like a Saturday Night Live prop.
Yeah,
right? You can see the different, and they're drawing it. Use your imagination and do something fun. But in this case, it seems like something that Werner Roth thought out. He's like, okay, you would need a wire that connects these two. You would need a casing for that wire. You would need something big enough to hold that type of energy. And then this is what the screen would probably, I just vibed with it. I was like, yeah, this is what a machine that uses psychic energy to reduce cosmic power would look like.
I don't disagree with that. When I say they fumbled the ball, I mean they fumbled the character of Juggernaut here.
Okay. Yes. No.
No.
Because he's filled with he's filled with the same rage that he had when we last saw him conscious. And his first step, he says, I have my Juggernaut power, and now I have Charles Xavier's psychic powers. I could take over the world with this by myself. There is nothing that can stop me.
Right.
But first, I got to kill the X-Men.
When I think of Juggernaut, though, I think of a guy who has one goal. It's he hates his stepbrother. He wants to kill and or show up his stepbrother. And then beyond that, he just kind of wants, he has simple appetites. He likes women and alcohol and money and fights, right? He's just one of these kind of guys. And so maybe I could see him hanging around to fight the X-Men because, this will be fun or this will be funny. But I don't see this, he's not a man of grand ambitions. I mean, I would see him waking up, killing Professor Xavier, or I think one of the reasons he keeps not killing Xavier is because I think there is some humanity in Juggernaut that he denies, and that is hard to see because he's such a kind of.
Xavier saw it. He was like, "Hey, I'm gonna put this man that has tried to kill me several times with and without powers back to his correct state of mind."
Right. I don't think he's psychotic. I think he's just a little power hungry, or he's even more than that. He's almost just bothered by the fact that any of this happened to him. So he's trying to get his revenge and then make the best of it. And I think that's why so I could see him doing exactly what he does here. Seeing Professor Xavier lying on the ground and then convincing himself, he's probably dead. I don't have to look. Because he doesn't actually want to kill Xavier.
Yeah, sure.
And then,
you're saying his ambitions for world domination seem out of character.
Yeah, I could see him then just heading to maybe sticking around to fight the X-Men, but not setting up weird traps and stuff like he does, which we have to get to in a second. The Cerebro thing there's a lot going on there. But more than that, I could see him just smashing up the mansion and then going to a bar to get a drink.
So I'm going to skip right to it, Matt. This is Roy Thomas once again trying to recapture Stan Lee's magic.
Okay.
With a strange, and I guess he and Werner Roth did it together, but this is echoing the first Juggernaut comic where we hadn't met Juggernaut yet. It's just some creature approaching a building in a very horror style way through the entire issue.
Right.
In this issue, we get, I think, 2 pages of the X-Men kind of creeping around in the dark. It looks like they're trying to evoke horror comics. Right. It seems like this was them trying to say, hey, remember when we did this before and you liked it so much?
Now the creature's in the building.
Us specifically, because we were singing the praises of it.
Yeah.
But I think it works. I'm not saying this is as good as many other X-Men issues. I'm saying I enjoyed reading this, and I thought that it all fit together really well. I especially enjoy the non-Juggernaut parts of it, the social lives of the X-Men getting really accelerated, and then also being able to throw them their save the cat moment where they don't necessarily save the day here. They don't tackle the threat, but they do at least get a fight that they can win, where they can show hey, we're good, we do good, and we're good at it.
Yeah, there's something really interesting about, there's especially the panel where the Satan Saints are circling the X-Men. You start to get this sense of, this is the first time we've seen all the X-Men out of uniform, just hanging out all together in a public setting, like with their girlfriends, and they're like standing near each other in like battle readiness, but just in their civilian personas. So you get the sense that, oh, these are people who train together, who have worked together, have fought together, saved the world together, have almost died together, and they know what they're doing, working with each other in whispers and looks, trying to figure out, all right, well,
Start planning.
how do we're going to kick these guys' asses, but how do we do it without like giving too much away? And the table moment, them tilting the table up, is like the perfect example of that.
Yeah. Although, you know what struck me during these scenes? Every one of the X-Men is ready to jump into action because people are in danger, except for Warren, who says, we shouldn't really do anything because then people will know our and this is an age-old superhero debate, right?
Yeah.
Do you jump into action when it risks revealing your secret identity if it would save lives? I know Spider-Man would do it. I know Cyclops would do it.
Right.
I know Warren wouldn't.
Right. Interesting.
He's also rich.
Hey, can we talk about...
I can't help but draw that connection.
Can we talk about Cerebro?
Yeah, why does it have all the X-Men's names on it now?
They get home, and one of the first like shocking things is there's all our names are written on Cerebro, and it's beeping because we're near it. So number one, that confirms that all you have to do to program Cerebro is write somebody's name on it, and it figures everything else out. Because there's no way Juggernaut knew how to reprogram it.
He just moved the labels.
Right. So that's first thing. Second thing, yeah, what did this do?
I honestly, until you said it just now, I didn't realize, I had forgotten about it. And I also didn't realize when I was reading it, this was a trap set for him. When you said it, I was like, oh yeah, they never went back to that.
This, you know what this makes me think about is when in Home Alone, right? When Kevin McAllister was setting all those traps for the bad guys, there had to be some traps he set that they didn't trigger. Like there had to be some bad ones, right? There had to be one where it's like, and if they open the fridge, this boxing glove's gonna punch him in the face. And like, oh no, they never opened the fridge. Or like, or ones that were just bad, right? Like as they come across this, 3 banana peels will drop on the floor, and then turns out banana peels aren't actually that slippery most of the time, and they just stomp over the banana peels. He's like, damn it, and they just don't show that in the movie.
Banana peels can be slippery. Like, I get that people think they've busted that myth, okay, but you can slip on a banana peel if it's inside down, like you see in Mario Kart. Like, that's a slippery surface.
And if the floor is the right kind of floor. Banana peel on a carpet, you're not going to slip. Banana peel on a road, gravel, you're not going to slip. Banana peel in your kitchen, you might slip. But you also might not. It depends how heavy you step on it.
Well, for the most part, they drive on macadam in Mario Kart, so...
Excuse me? Rachel McAdams?
No, macadam. This is, you have an aversion to words around tar.
Macadam. So, like macadamia.
No, Matt.
How do I have an aversion to words around tar? Name another word around tar that I have trouble with.
Pitch.
Oh, okay. All right. Fair enough. All right. You're right. Can you tell me about macadam?
No, let me talk about this. Plan G is for glider, and they make an ice glider. Plan F is for flank, and they flank the enemy.
Plan K is for kiss, and they give them a big smooch.
Can't wait. There's a point. Okay, so we didn't mention it last issue or a couple issues ago, but there is a point where Bobby accidentally clips Iceman with some ice as he's trying to take out a bad guy.
Okay, yeah.
And then this issue, as Bobby is searching around in the dark, he hears someone rushing towards him. Turns out it's Beast, also trying to find the professor in the darkened mansion. Beast just tackles him.
Right.
This is Warren taking friendly fire for a third time in like 6 issues. At some point, you have to start examining that, seeing if there's something you can take responsibility for.
Yeah. In addition, Angel's big thing is he can fly, so he dodges stuff all the time. He's very fast and he can dodge stuff. He doesn't seem very good at dodging things anymore. He seems to get hit by stuff like a lot.
He does. Also, I didn't want to mention it, but his big weakness is nets. He keeps getting caught in a net. And he can't do anything about it once he does.
There's this thing I think sometimes comic book writers run across where they have there's a character with powers, and they want to subvert those powers. They want to give that person a weakness, right? So for Cyclops, a lot of times he just fights enemy after enemy after enemy who have armor on that reflects his beams, and then
right.
Over time, what you're doing is you're making that character not super anymore, thus not interesting. The 17th time Angel gets hit by something while he's flying in the air, you're like, okay, he's not that good at dodging.
Right. Or like it's like the sagas where you follow a superhero without their powers, where like, all right, it's fun for a little while, but I read this to see him grapple with the power and solve problems with it.
Right. Oh, or in the 90s, how like everybody had adamantium to counter Wolverine's adamantium.
Oh my God.
I guess that's not entirely true. Like there's still interesting facets to their characters, but not for Angel, because he doesn't really have much of a personality.
Yeah. Because you take that all away, he just flies and has a lot of money. One just very fun character moment that maybe I explored too much in my head, but I absolutely love. Mm-hmm. Hank watches old Tarzan movies. Vera accuses him of, I guess, staying up late when they hang out and watching old Tarzan movies on TV. I can relate to this so strongly because I will watch movies from the 80s at 2:00 in the morning when I have insomnia. I don't know. He's a little stoner just watching goofy old television to pass time.
Yeah, I do think that is the implication, right? That these guys are, I mean, they hang out with beatniks and at a coffee shop.
They're a little goofy.
Yeah, they're definitely like the implication is these guys are like hippie stoners, right? In fact, I believe even in what Marvel The Untold Story, they say that the implication was intended to be that Beast was a stoner.
Outstanding. All right. Yeah. I'm going to read it with that reading moving forward. I had not considered that.
Yeah, so how do you feel about this as to me, it's just more Roy Thomas, right? It's just a parade of weird supervillains that can be fun, but don't quite fit with the X-Men. Like, again, I can really see why the X-Men weren't a popular comic. Because it's just like, another weird bad guy, another weird bad
another
guy.
Robot.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's getting better at it. Like, I think he is at least playing to the X-Men's strengths a little bit.
Right.
They are putting nonstop action in these comics. There are so many fun but overpacked stories.
Right.
The action is illustrated brilliantly. Some of these sequences are really just something to behold. You can get like these full 2-page spreads of just panel after panel of beautiful, engaging, living action, but it's just too much. Like, it felt like too much. And you can't put that much dynamic action with that many words. You need to start trading one for the other, and you can go every other page if you want, but calm down.
Right.
Roy Thomas.
Roy Thomas is introducing something here that becomes very important, right? Like, the X-Men become a soap opera of sorts. And
yes,
he is introducing that here, even though he's not fully exploring it. He's like unraveling simple plots like the love triangle for more complex plots, like people getting closer, more than just the Stanley. Somebody's tortured by the same psychological problem over and over and over every single issue. Now Cyclops is communicating that and moving through it. And now he's struggling with this idea of maybe I can control my I-beams if I work hard enough, which he can't, but it's still this like that he has this goal in mind, right? I think that sort of and these little throwaway things, right? Like Beast thinking to himself, Hank McCoy is going away and the Beast is taking over, right? These things are far more interesting than, again, fighting your third robot of the month.
Yeah. Their social lives are moving now at the same pace as their professional lives. I call this their professional lives, the superhero.
Who's paying them?
Instead of like 3 pages at the beginning that shows you where they are socially, and then the rest of the issue being about them being superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
Not only are they devoting more time and moving plots forward at a faster pace with their social lives, they're also weaving it into the action, which I really like. Scott is personally affected by the fact that Jean is in danger and takes actions based on that because of the thoughts we saw him have earlier in the issue.
Right.
So from that side of it, I think it's really fun. And maybe that's why I'm enjoying these so much. Mm-hmm. But I love the soap opera of it, the serious Archie comics.
Right. We're going to get so much more of that later on, but it's nice to see it beginning. Do we have a Pat's Deals and Steals this week?
Matt, we have a Pat's Deals and Steals. This was just a goofy little ad I found. If it's not clear from my reading of the copy here, what I'm about to talk to you about is just flashcards, index cards with questions on them. They are called Would You Believe?
Whoa.
And the ad reads, Would you believe that Would You Believe gag cards will make you a star of stage, screen, and TV? No? Would you believe they're the world's funniest flashcards to flash on friends and relatives at work at gatherings? A card for every happening, every occasion? No one can top you when you flash a Would You Believe card on them. Now, I'm going to pause in the copy here and read you some of these cards. Would you believe my flying saucer is parked outside? Would you believe a tricycle? Would you believe I can lift 7,000 pounds? Would you believe 2 lollipops and a Tootsie Roll? Would you believe millions of people adore me? Would you believe my mother kind of likes me?
Okay, so on one side of the card, it says, it's like, would you believe it's something crazy? And then you flip it over, and it's like, would you believe this more reasonable thing?
Okay. Would you believe I can lift 7,000 pounds? Well, would you believe I can lift 2 lollipops and a Tootsie Roll?
Yeah. What the hell? Is it supposed to be funny? Okay, go ahead.
Let me get back to the copy. Maybe it'll explain more for us. Would you believe that for $1,000 you can have 100 cards as funny or funnier than the samples shown? No. Would you believe 100 cards for only $1?
Yeah, I guess.
Matt?
Yeah.
You better believe it.
Okay.
Be the first to be in on the Would You Believe craze. Flash them on your friends. Stump your family. Everyone will roar.
Who thought that this was gonna take off?
I don't know, but you get 100 things for $1, which breaks down to 10 cents each, which I don't care what it is. Oh, it breaks down to a penny each.
Oh,
I'd pay $10 for this at 10 cents a card.
But you also have to enclose 25 cents for the extra shipping and handling.
That's true.
It says here, stump your family. Why would that... Would you believe... If you walked up to somebody and said, would you believe I have a UFO parked outside? I'm not going to be stumped. I'm going to just be like, why are you saying that to me? Why did you say that to me?
Maybe you want to leave people just befuddled.
This is the strangest one. This is the strangest one you've presented. Because somebody thought, oh, this is really going to get them. This is going to make me money. And clearly it didn't, because we've never heard of these things. This has not become any sort of cultural artifact. There's nobody ever says, nobody does this format of quote unquote joke. So it didn't catch on.
There's really nothing.
The only place that you can find any mention of it, and I've tried I've tried so many different ways of searching this. The only place you can find it is somebody else talking about this exact ad.
Oh, I wanted to be the first one. All right. Clip this part, put it up there. We're going to get more hits than whatever the fuck that guy said.
Well, that's a great Pat's Deals and Steals. I would pay $1 for 100 No, I wouldn't. There's no way I would ever pay this. And nobody did. Nobody at all did. Nobody bought this.
Yeah, they tanked real fast.
Yeah. Everybody, thank you so much for listening to Mutant Menace. You can, if you have any questions or comments or just want to tell us you like us, email us at mutantmenacepod@gmail.com. You follow us on Instagram at Mutant Menace
Don't tell us
Pod.
you like us there.
Don't tell us anything.
On Instagram.
Don't talk to us there. No, please do.
Yeah.
If you could like and share the show with other people you think might be interested or just the general public, review it on iTunes or Spotify or wherever, that would be fucking awesome. You can find our clips. We do slightly more produced video clips of this show that we put up on Instagram and on YouTube. Thanks to Krills Wilson for our intro music and Julia Selly, the voice of Trish Tilby. So, Pat, do you want to take us out on our catchphrase that we say at the end of every episode?
That's right. As you know, this just might work. I'm already starting to tingle.
And remember, flake off, Bright Eyes. You're just beefing because you muffed your own shot at ramrodding that kooky crew.
Oh my god.